welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We're having a wonderful conversation today with Cara Bradley, author of On The Verge, and we're just getting into what is On The Verge. So you spoke last segment about how, you know, the verge is sort of this nexus between two tributaries of a river coming together where there's extreme biodiversity and lots of plant and animal life and stuff. So how does that relate to this experience that you had of dropping into the state or being aware of this state where you were able to do your personal best?
Yeah, so once I found out that the verge existed, that there's actually a place where life thrives, I again went on my search. Well, where do I thrive? And so after lots of searching and practicing and inquiry, I recognized very simply that the verge is this moment.
Okay.
And when I can arrive fully in this moment, I thrive. And what happened to me on the track so many years ago, was that I had just dropped into presence completely.
Okay.
And when I can show up, wake up, show up, it's the subtitle of my book, Wake Up, Show Up, and Shine. When I can wake up to this moment, show up fully, open and available, I shine, we shine. We access the intelligences coming through us all the time.
Yeah. It sounds almost like Eckhart Tolle's experience on the park bench when he experienced that moment of truly being present in the now, when all of a sudden everything shifted and changed for him.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Very influential book in my life, for sure.
Okay, cool. So we like the same kind of folks. So once you were able to kind of distill this crystal bit down of like its real presence, how then were you able to, especially in our world where there's so much distraction and so many things plugging for our attention, were you able to just drop into the presence, or did you actually have to develop some tools or some practices or something to really help you to be present, to be able to get back to that potential?
Right, yes. Moving my body. I've been doing it my whole life.
Okay.
And then practicing yoga was the gateway to then my mind in a different way, and with a systematic practice, with an ancient practice of meditation. And so now I'm starting to develop these tools, not just, you know, flying down the street on my rollerblades, which is amazing, but actual predictable practices that I can go to every day to start to cultivate the capacity to show up on purpose, to be present in this moment.
What for you individually is the biggest challenge to overcome with being present?
I think it's really trusting. I think we just lack trust that we can just be here now. And this is what I recognize in myself and then in the students that I teach.
Right.
When we can start to recognize these glimpses, when we're already present every day, we may pause and smell the coffee. It may be the sunset that takes our breath away. It may be the moment when we catch somebody's gaze and hold it. These are moments of presence that are already happening for us. This is how I teach. This is how I spend my day. It's not beating myself up anymore to say, you're not present, you're so busy, you're full of fear, you're this, you're that. It's actually, I'm looking for those moments when time stands still. When I'm standing right there on the verge in this moment. Right? Because we feel it, right? It's like standing on that ley line. You felt it. We feel this all the time.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm curious, because you're now a teacher, at what point did sort of your search for this presence turn into, oh, now I know how to do this, I can help other people with this? Was there a particular moment, or was it just sort of a gradual development?
Wow, great question. I've been teaching since I was 15 years old. Remember, I had to put on my skates as an amateur skater, and I started teaching people. So my entire life, I've been teaching people movement disciplines. And I've always seen that when we move our bodies rhythmically, through skating, yoga, running, whatever it is, swimming, we shift. We shift because we're able to drop down. Our mind settles, our nervous system settles. And people, I see people come alive. I know what it feels like, experientially, to come alive from movement. So I've always been teaching it, but I never really understood what it was I was teaching.
Gotcha.
Until I really started to dive in myself through these ancient practices whose lineage, the lineages, have the words for me. You know, for me, it was always so much just sensation in my body.
Right.
Now
right,
I was
right.
able to tap into the ancient knowledge of actually what was happening mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually.
Right, right. So it's kind of like your body had the knowing that actually bypassed the brain, but then studying these ancient practices, it's like, oh, okay, now the brain can understand what the body already knew.
Right.
Ah,
right.
okay.
And that we can do this on purpose.
Yeah.
This is our birthright. Our birthright is to feel awake,
Yes.
alert,
Yes.
at ease,
Yes.
and connected.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So can you give maybe our audience some little thing they can try and practice to give them, move them a step closer to that, or to help them to be a little more aware of that presence?
Yeah. So I recommend starting to notice those moments every day when you feel awake, when you feel, or as I usually put it, fully alive. What are those moments that are happening when you feel fully alive? Before you go to bed at night, you know, many of us practice gratitude,
Yes.
and we go to bed and we think about 3 things we're grateful for.
Right.
How about thinking about 3 things that made you feel really alive that day? And it could have been the really good slice of pizza.
Yeah.
That works. Right? Or
Right.
that moment when you were on the last, couple of steps of your run, or whatever it is, the sun that you felt on your face as you were pausing at the stop sign. Any moment. Because as we start to recognize these moments, they're going to start popping up more.
Yeah.
And so for me, I teach from kind of the back door, mindfulness from the back door, where many of us understand mindfulness, and we're always thinking, okay, I got to pay attention,
Yeah.
but I'm so distracted.
Right.
Well, how about we look at it from the opposite? How about we start recognizing moments of presence?
Interesting. It's interesting hearing you say that, and now I reflect back to today for me, and I had that moment, and I had to get up early this morning. I have a networking group that meets twice a month regularly, early on Thursdays. And I got up this morning, I was really kind of tired. I got into the subway. Thankfully, I got a seat on the train. And I just sat and meditated till I got to my stop, or just before my stop. And then afterwards, when I opened my eyes and I looked around, like everything was crisp and sharp and clear. And that was what you were describing. Like that was that moment for me of that presence. Not when I was meditating necessarily, but the moment I opened my eyes afterwards.
Brilliant. That's it.
Yeah.
So what happens when we show up in this moment, when we're present, is that we see life, we experience life in what I call high definition, high voltage living. It's as if we're plugged in to that ley line.
Yeah.
When we're present, the smells are stronger, tastes are more distinct. Everything that you see is brighter, more vivid. This is how we can walk through the world from a state of presence and a wakefulness. So thank you for saying that. That's spot on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious, what sort of was the impetus for you to just finally decide to write a book? Because, I mean, you're already teaching, you're already working with people. Why did you decide to write a book?
Well, I felt like it was in me to speak in a broader, to a broader audience, but also as a yoga teacher. I mean, many of you out there probably practice yoga.
Sure.
The teacher only gets sound bites. I only have 5 breaths in each pose to speak to students before I've got to move them to the next pose, and I don't want to talk their ear off the entire class.
Right.
So I felt like I had just so much to say that I wasn't able to express in a yoga class or even a meditation class.
Right,
So
right.
it was the call for me to finally put it down on paper.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what kinds of reactions have you gotten so far from people from the book? I mean, you know, has it been something that people kind of get, they love it, or has it been like confusing for people, or they're like, yeah, it's about time?
Yeah, I think I've gotten all 3. You know? I mean, there are definitely people who are like, fully alive, because I talk about being awake and fully alive in the book. What does it feel like?
Right.
We're never asked that question.
Right.
What does it feel like for you to be awake and fully alive? And so for some people, you know, I may get kind of that glossed over look. Like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed your book. That was really great.
Right.
But for others, they do. They look at me like, wow, okay, yeah, I'm getting this, but I want more. And so what I provide in the book are all these primer practices. The primer practices that I talk about are the practices you can do before you ever actually sit down to a formal meditation practice. So they're little glimpses. They're ways to glimpse presence throughout the day. And it may be as simple as sky gazing. Taking a moment or two, you're sitting on the bus,
like that.
Look out the window and look at the sky. The vastness just opens you up just by looking.
Yes, even if you live in New York City where you're surrounded by skyscrapers, you can still catch a little piece of sky there.
Right.
Yeah. Wonderful.
So it's helping people into that state of presence before they even close their eyes and start counting breath and meditation practice.
Right. Wonderful. Wonderful. I love that because it really sort of helps to take those practices that typically, people become monks and they go into the forests and the caves to meditate. And I feel like now is the time to take those practices out of the forests and caves and bring it into daily life. And how do we cultivate the same kind of presence in places like New York City or, cities around the globe?
Yes.
So that's wonderful. It's wonderful to have that. Though, is it easier for you to do it maybe when you're in a more nature-oriented or more serene place, or it doesn't really matter? You've gotten to that point where regardless of what's going on around you, you're able to really feel that presence and being in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me now, I would much rather be present than be distracted. It's so much more fun to be present in life, even if the moment it ain't so good. It's still better to be present and show up for it.
Right.
So for me, I'm just always looking for how do I just show up right now.
Okay, regardless of what's in the background.
Right.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, great. Well, believe it or not, it's time for us to take our last commercial break of the show. So when we come back, I have a couple of final questions for you, and then we'll where you can find your book, and we'll have some closing thoughts from Cara Bradley. So everybody, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening. I'll be right back.